Park City, Utah, a bookstore. Late afternoon, a woman sits behind a small folding table, a stack of books beside her. On the front of the cover, a parent and child, a tree losing its leaves one at a time. The book is called Are You With Me? A stranger steps up to the table. Kouri Richins signs the title page, looks up, and tells her that grief doesn't follow a schedule, that kids need permission to still be happy. On March 7th, 2023, it was published. Her husband had died the year before, sudden, unexplained, a father of 3 gone before anyone could prepare for it. She wrote the book for her own sons, she says, to help them survive the unimaginable. Just 2 months later, she was arrested for her husband's murder. Exhibit A, the timeline. Valentine's Day 2022. Eric Richins eats a sandwich his wife made him before heading out for the day. Within hours, he's unconscious, rushed to a hospital that can't explain what's wrong with the healthy man in his late 30s. He survives, doctors run tests, but nothing explains why a healthy 39-year-old suddenly became so sick. After several days, he's discharged and goes home. At the time, it looks like a medical mystery. Prosecutors would later tell the jury it wasn't a mystery at all. They argued it was the first attempt. 17 days pass. March 3rd, Eric and Kouri are home. She just closed on a home for her real estate business, a small win worth celebrating. She mixes him a Moscow Mule. He drinks it. Later that night, Eric is unresponsive. She calls it in. First responders arrive to a healthy 39-year-old man with no pulse and no obvious cause. She tells the responding officers on body camera that her husband had never touched a pill in his life. For a while, that's the story. A tragic, unexplained overdose. A grieving widow left to raise 3 boys alone. Nobody in that room knows that they're looking at the second attempt. Exhibit B, the marriage. June 15th, 2013. Eric and Kouri Richins signed a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. One clause stated that if they got divorced, Eric's assets stayed his. If he died while they were still married, Kouri would inherit everything. Between 2015 and 2017, without telling him, she takes out at least 4 life insurance policies on his life. Combined payout close to $2 million. For a while, Eric doesn't know any of this. Then, in September 2020, he finds out something. A $250,000 line of credit against their house, opened with a forged deed. $100,000 pulled from his accounts. $30,000 more on his cards. A power of attorney he never signed. Over $100,000 in taxes that were supposed to go to the government and never did. He confronts her. She promises to pay it back. She doesn't. This is where the marriage actually starts falling apart, one document at a time. Eric starts separating their finances. He talks to divorce attorneys. Friends would later testify that Eric stopped trusting his wife with money years before he died. He considers leaving. Instead, he stays for his sons, 9, 7, and 5 years old. But somewhere in those years, Eric starts telling people something none of them think much of at the time. Exhibit C, the investigation. For weeks after Eric's death, this stays an overdose case. No suspects, no foul play. Just a medical examiner waiting on toxology and a story already writing itself in public. A young widow, 3 boys, a devastating loss. Eric's sister Katie doesn't fired. She's already fighting Kouri in civil court over the family trust, mismanagement, and a wrongful death claim. She isn't waiting for detectives to catch up to her instincts. She hires a private investigator. He isn't looking for a killer when he starts. He's trying to answer one question. Did Eric Richins really die the way everyone thinks he did? The more records he pulls, the less the official story makes sense. What he finds gets handed to the Summit County Sheriff's Office. Detectives pull warrants. They started asking who had access to Eric in his final weeks, and one name keeps surfacing: the housekeeper. At the same time, investigators began hearing something else. As they interview people closest to Eric, a pattern starts to emerge. Eric Richins had been telling people he believed Kouri had tried to poison him before, more than once. He told them plainly, "If anything ever happens to me, look at Kouri." Years later, investigators would hear those same warnings repeated back to them by the people Eric had trusted. Meanwhile, none of this had reached the public yet. Are You With Me is already on shelves. Kouri is doing local TV and radio, telling audiences the book helped her sons process losing their father, while 3 counties over, investigators are quietly pulling deleted messages off her phone. Exhibit D, the evidence. The toxicology report finally comes back. Not a heart attack, not alcohol, not an accidental overdose, but fentanyl. Roughly 5 times the amount considered lethal. Suddenly, Valentine's Day looks different. Prosecutors argued the sandwich and the Moscow Mule weren't separate tragedies. They were 2 parts of the same plan. Investigators eventually traced the fentanyl back to one person, the housekeeper, Carmen. On the witness stand, she tells the jury it didn't start with fentanyl. Kouri, she says, first asked her to find pain pills for an investigator. Later, she came back with another request. The investigator wanted something stronger. Carmen found fentanyl through another contact. She warned Kouri it wouldn't be cheap. Kouri wanted it anyway. According to Carmen's testimony, Kouri had $1,000 inside one of the homes she was renovating. The back door was left unlocked so Carmen could let herself in, retrieve the cash, and complete the deal. Carmen testified she sold Kouri fentanyl 3 separate times before Eric died. After Eric died, Carmen testified she asked Kouri one question: "Please tell me those pills weren't for him." According to Carmen, Kouri looked at her and said no. She told her Eric had died from a brain aneurysm. Carmen believed her. Investigators wouldn't. Then the phones. Investigators recover an iPhone showing thousands of deleted texts and searches, spanning January through March of 2022, the exact window leading up to Eric's death. Who those messages were with, investigators couldn't say for certain. What they could say is a month after the funeral, Kouri stops using that phone and moves to another one. On the new phone, nothing gets deleted. A forensic analyst testified to the searches recovered from it. Whether the FBI can recover deleted messages, what counts as a lethal dose of fentanyl, and what shows up on a death certificate when someone's been poisoned. 3 searches, typed into her phone, weeks after her husband had passed away. Exhibit E, the defense. The defense's case leaned on a genuine gap in the state's evidence. No camera caught a hand pouring anything into a glass. No witness watched her do it. In closing, the defense told the jury the state couldn't even say how the fentanyl entered Eric's system. The defense called it paper-thin evidence. But here's the fact that closed the gap between doubt and verdict. On the night her husband died, on camera, in her own voice, Kouri Richins told police he had never touched a pill in his life. Weeks before that night, she had been buying fentanyl from the woman who cleans her house. Exhibit F, the verdict. March 16, 2026. 13 days of testimony. More than 40 witnesses for the state. The defense called none. Think about that. It sounds damning, but it isn't necessarily. Defendants aren't required to prove anything, and resting without a witness is sometimes the safer play. Don't hand the prosecution anything new to attack. Kouri Richins never took the stand in her own defense. The jury never heard her explain the searches, the money, or the sandwich in her own words. In closing, the prosecution played Kouri's 911 call for the jury, timed against how long it took her to start CPR. The first minute, he told them, is the sound of a wife becoming a black widow. He turned her own phone against her and argued that a person doesn't search whether investigators can recover deleted texts unless they already know exactly why they deleted them. That she wanted out of the marriage, he said, but she didn't want to leave the money behind. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. Aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, forgery, 2 counts of insurance fraud. Sentencing was set for May 13th, Eric's birthday. Her attorneys asked for a delay. The judge said no. Both families had a right to a speedy hearing, hers included. At sentencing, Kouri spoke for a half an hour, mostly to her sons, telling them that she hadn't taken their father from them, that the accusation was absurd. One of her sons, identified only by his initials, said he wouldn't feel safe if his mother was ever released. The judge handed down the maximum sentence available, life without the possibility of parole. Kouri Richins says she's appealing. She still maintains her innocence. For a year, she controlled the narrative. Widow, author, survivor. Every interview, every signing, every page, she was the one telling the story, and people believed her. She wrote a book to help children survive the loss of a parent, a story meant to bring comfort to families facing their darkest moments. She wanted to be remembered as someone who helped others heal, but sometimes the stories we create reveal more than we ever intended. Because in the end, the very book she wrote to help children understand the pain of losing a parent became a reminder of the pain her own children would have to endure. The lesson she tried to teach the world became the lesson her own family had to live through. Because sometimes karma isn't loud. Sometimes it quietly turns the story you wrote into the story you're remembered by. I'm Justin Luther, and these are the Karma Case Files.